every time. So welcome to Brooks's Bass Corner. Like I said, this is live chat number 3. It's good to see you. Thank you for coming along. I'm just going to slightly change the camera. There we go. It's better. And so welcome. Thank you for coming along. Thank you for all the views and the likes and the comments and all the stuff on social media. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. It's all very much appreciated. So thank you. Okay, what housekeeping have we got? Okay, so the Trace Elliott Elf combo competition that ended about 3 weeks ago, and the winner was a guy called James from London, I think. And I'm hoping you've received your prize, which would have come from PV UK. And if you have received it, send us a message. Let us know that you received it okay. And if you've got any footage or any photos of you with the combo, let's see them. And I hope you enjoy it because it's a fabulous amp. So the big news will be in a couple of weeks. I'm led to believe it will be a couple of weeks. We're going to have another competition and another giveaway, a fairly big one. I can't give away too much information at the moment, in case there's a delay with the prize, but keep your eyes posted on the channel, keep checking on the social media messages, and when I'm ready to announce it, you will be the first to know. You don't want to miss this. It could be a very nice prize for someone out there, and I assume it will be available to everyone in the world, like we did with the Trace Elliott combo. So keep coming back and checking. And let's see, so what else? So we've done the competitions. As you will have seen on the channel, since we last did a live chat, we've had pedal reviews and essential bass album videos. There's a bunch of interviews that I'll be posting up over the next 2 or 3 weeks. One of them is an up-to-date one that's only been done the past couple of weeks, and a couple of them are from my vintage vault, which have been done in years gone by. So there's going to be a whole bunch of those coming up, dealing with all sorts of players of all sorts of musical persuasions as well. So I hope you enjoy those. Then I've got to seriously address the bass reviews, because I haven't put any up for quite a while, and there was a reason for that. And it meant I had to put other stuff up on the channel as a priority, but bass reviews are coming. I've been editing like crazy over the past week or two, and those will start appearing this week. So some of them will be from my own collection. Some of them will be relatively new products that are probably already out there on the market, but you might not have seen too many reviews of. And then there should be some brand new products as well. So the thing with bass reviews is, because I've got a fairly large collection here, and I had hoped originally to get a lot more of those up quicker than I did. But what happened was, when the channel first started, was that I had an opportunity to get new product from a retailer and turn it over very quickly. So that was why my private collection kind of got left to the side somewhat, but I'll be coming back to that over the next couple of weeks. But like I say, once we come out of this current lockdown that we're in here in the UK, it'll be possible for me to get out there and start picking up equipment to feature here on the channel. So a whole load of bass reviews coming, interviews coming, more pedal reviews, because there aren't enough of those, and on my channel. Originally they weren't generating a lot of views, but what's happened is, now that the channel is moving and there's some traction, the pedal reviews are kind of catching up in viewing numbers as much as the basses and the interviews. So there'll be a load of those coming up. And further from the last live chat, very shortly going to get stuck into the workshop videos showing you how to set your bass up. And what I'm going to do with that is, I'm going to break it down into chunks rather than it be one long video. that could take like 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes. And a lot of you guys out there just don't have the time to watch that sort of video. So I'm going to break it down into chunks, doing each job as a separate video, and also a load of base tips stuff as well. I started on that when the channel first started, and then it kind of got put to the side because the reviews and the interviews kind of took priority. So a whole load of stuff coming your way, really. Right, let's go on with some shout outs. Let's see who we've got here. We've got Stacey from North Carolina. Good evening. Jazzy Ron, good evening, sir. Honoured. I was featured on Ron's radio show last Sunday. Hope any of you that had a listen enjoyed it. And it was me blethering on for about 3/4 of an hour about my career and the channel and what I've done with the magazines that I've written for. And you know, I was honoured. Thank you, Ron. Thanks for asking me on. And apparently we're going to do round 2 in a short time. So obviously I'll advertise that here on the channel. But it was an honour and a privilege, and some great questions too. Let's see, we got Marla Audio. Good evening. Hi, welcome. You're more than welcome. Jazz, yeah. And people are coming on, so cool. Get yourselves settled, get a cup of tea. We're going to go through till 6 o'clock. It's just coming up for 7 minutes past 5, so plenty of time to talk all sorts of things. So the way I've normally done these live chats is open it up to you guys who are out there. Obviously, if you're watching this after we're broadcast, you can't send the questions, but you can always leave a comment in the comments section of the video, and I'll come back to you as soon as I can. So those are always appreciated. They do have an effect on the YouTube rating. So if you guys have comments when you're watching this, it could be 2 days time, it could be 2 months time, it could be 2 years time. Put those comments in and I'll come back to you as soon as I can. So topics of discussion, anything you want to ask me about the channel and the social media stuff. If you're a new YouTuber and you want to ask me some questions about how I've set this up and the progress I'm making, this has only been running since the 31st of July 2020. So I've actually only been going 6 months today. And yeah, it's, if you choose to go down the YouTube route, it's a lot of work and it doesn't come quickly, but you have to build traction. It's like pushing a snowball. At the moment, I'm still going up. At some point, we'll get to the top and it will start rolling down the other side. So if you've got any questions about that, I'm more than happy to help. Now, I'm putting this one out there. I haven't asked you guys out there in YouTube land on a live chat before. What would you find useful? So my background is I've been playing 26 years this year. I've done over 4,000 shows. I've played with some names. I've done lots of covers work, lots of tribute work, wedding band work. I'm based here in London in the UK, and I've run bands, organised gigs, put on events. I write for Bass Guitar Magazine and Bass Player Magazine. I've done hundreds of reviews. I think when I last looked at the number of files, it was about 400 reviews in the 2 magazines. So what would you guys find useful as bass players, musicians, teeth back in, musicians in general? Is there anything that I could help you with, give advice on? If it comes to gear, is there something you want to know about a specific piece of gear? Sounds, bass sounds, things you might be looking for, albums that you might like. If you're a new bass player, suggestions for things that you might want to listen to. If you have got those sort of questions regarding albums and artists, certainly have a look at my Essential Bass Albums playlist. On there, rather than it veering towards, in inverted commas, classic albums, they're what I call essential bass albums. So rather than it being based on an album that shifted 25 million copies, but the bass playing wasn't a major part of that album being successful. I'm looking at albums, they didn't necessarily need to sell millions of copies, but the bass player and the work that he did on that album, the bass sounds, the lines, those are what I'm looking at. And actually, someone asked me this week what my criteria were for classing something as an essential bass album. And I politely replied, well, it's my channel and the criteria are my criteria. So if I think something is an essential bass album, that's the only criteria it has to go by. But without sounding rude, I would hope that by suggesting that album, and as I say in the videos, I'm putting these albums forward for your interest, that you might want to, or you might watch the video and think, actually, I need to go and have a listen to that album. There might be some really good bass stuff on there that I might find useful or handy or interesting. So, yeah, so the criteria are my criteria, but that doesn't mean you have to agree with it, and you might not. The albums might not be of any interest to you whatsoever, but they're albums that either I've listened to over decades of being a music fan and thought that's an amazing album, and the bass work on that is really worth investigating. Let's think what other things you might find useful. Technical stuff, you know, what things you should carry in your gig bag if you're out gigging, which a lot of us aren't at the moment. But when that time comes, if you're a beginner, you know, what things should you carry? For me, it was knowing what to put in my gig bag came over years of experience of gigging, and things came and went, and some things went in the box and stayed, and some things went in and came straight back out again. But if you've got those sort of questions, if I can impart some help and advice, I'm more than happy to do so. If you've got any questions regarding my writing for Bass Guitar Magazine or Bass Player Magazine, happy to go into that. Basses and gear, if you want to talk technical stuff and equipment, I'm more than happy to do that. Making a living as a muso. Yeah, I've been doing that for 26 years. So if you've got questions on that front, I'm more than happy to answer them. And if you've got any questions regarding people I've interviewed, if you've watched any of the interview videos that I've posted up, or if you've read any of the interviews that I've written for the magazines over the years, more than happy to discuss that. And then if you want to go into bands I like and talk about albums or tracks or the musicians in those bands, I'm more than happy to talk about Queen, Duran Duran, Toto, Level 42, Prince, Chic, Earth, Wind and Fire, and millions of other bands. So I will now open the floor to you guys and let your questions come in, and I'll work my way through them as best I can. So here we go. Happy 6-month anniversary. Yes, thank you. It's been a long road, and as I've said to quite a few people, I aim on keeping this channel going for the next 20 years or so. So there's a lot of roads to travel and material to deal with and instruments to look at. So, you know, if you want to come on the ride with me, I'm more than happy to have you with me. So, okay, Marla Audio, how did you get your sponsorship for your prizes? I run a show called Mix Off Monday, but feel a competition would help give it a great boost. I hope this is okay for a question. Yes, it's perfectly okay for a question. Okay, the prizes, I did a competition just before the Trace Elliot one, which was I gave away a level 42 Bass Book 3 from Stuart Clayton at Bassline Publishing, and Stuart writes the best books on, well, in fact, pretty much everything. Hi, Stu, if you're out there. And I've known Stuart for 19 years. And I was just having a conversation with him about the new books he had coming out. And he said, well, would you like one personally? And I said, well, I already have the original series of level 42 books that Stuart produced. And I said, well, it would just be repeating stuff I've already got, but I more than happily put it up as a prize on the channel. So that kind of set that ball rolling. Now, obviously, I know what you're getting at is how do I get a big prize like a combo or an amp? In that situation, It came through because of relationships I have with companies, having been a player for 26 years professionally, 34 years this year since I picked a bass up. So I have contacts at companies, and also knowing people through doing the London Bass Guitar Show, but also my work with the magazine. So for a lot of people who don't know, when we get equipment for review, sometimes it comes to you blind. You know nothing about it. There's no specification. You may not already have pre-existing contact with the company that it's coming from. Or the magazine might just send it to you and say, review it, and that's it. Thankfully, I mean, I worked for Bass Guitar Magazine from 2004 up to 2020. And obviously, Bass Guitar Magazine's now been amalgamated into Bass Player Magazine. But in that time, obviously, I've known lots of people for different companies, distributors, manufacturers. And obviously now doing the channel as well, the company, well, PV UK, basically came to me and said, we would like to offer this up as a prize. Would you be interested in getting involved? And I said, absolutely, of course. And that was it. That set that ball rolling. So you can do it in a number of ways. You can either start small and contact companies and see if they would be willing to put items up, and start small. You know, it might just be a set of strings, or it might be a bass strap, or it might be merchandise and things like drinks coasters, or it could be a gig bag, a small gig bag, or some leads, and see if anyone will give you or provide stuff for free, because it's exposure for them via your channel. Obviously, if you don't have large subscriber numbers, they're going to go, well, we might not give you any stuff until your subscriber numbers are up. For bigger pieces of equipment, it's purely having communication with companies, but it's the same thing as being a musician and getting an endorsement. Are you a good advert for them? So is this competition going to provide them what's in it for them? Not in a bad way, but are you providing information for them? Is there contact details for them to potentially contact people who are entering the competition, for them to send promotional information when they have new products? So with that, I think I'd say don't run before you can walk, but certainly starting with small prizes and building up is probably a good way of doing it. And also with small prizes, you don't have to do lots of them all in one hit. You could do one a month, or you could build it into a series of things. So if people know that each month you're going to be giving away a prize, no matter how big it is, chances are they'll keep coming back to your channel to see what's on offer each month. So that would be my advice. I mean, I'm not, certainly after 6 months, I'm not the most knowledgeable people on getting competition prizes, but certainly I would say start small and then build it up and see where you go from there. But it is about relationships with the companies, and like I say, what's coming from you for your side of the deal. That would be how I'd be looking at it. But it is no different than getting an endorsement. Some guy who's only done 50 gigs is not going to get a deal endorsement over someone who's done thousands of gigs or has a profile already. So it's a constant build-up. So I hope that answers the question. Jazzy Ron, when can I send you one of my bass cabs to review? I'll tell you what, Ron, I will get in touch in about, let's think, 4 or 5 weeks time, because I've already got quite a backlog of stuff that I need to get uploaded onto the channel. So rather than you send it to me and it's sitting here and I can't do much with it until I've got the other stuff, I'll give you a shout. So don't call me, I'll call you. But we will do that, that's no problem. Okay. Gary, hello. For anyone who doesn't know, Gary is one of my bass heroes. He was 2 years above me at school when we were at secondary school, and it was watching Gary play bass and the fact that he was lovely and down to earth was a bit of a cattle prod as to why I then took up bass guitar. So I owe him lots, and he knows it. Okay, opinion on Korg's purchase of Aguilar and how their Spectre purchase is going so far. Well, from what I can see, hear and read, most Spectre fans seem to be quite happy with what Korg are doing. And I have to say, I don't think I've seen so much new Spectre product than they have come up with since they took over. And it can only be a good thing. I guess a lot of the Spectre guys from New York are still involved. Obviously, Stuart's taken early retirement, but I would imagine he'll still have his hand in somewhere. But from that perspective, the Spectre stuff, and certainly, I read what you do with your Facebook groups and what have you. And let's be fair, there's no one in the UK with as many Spectres as yourself. But like I say, all the positive stuff I'm hearing, it doesn't sound like Korg are putting a foot wrong. Now, the Aguilar side, I know a little bit more, obviously, because I'm an Aguilar artist, and I've had a word with the two head honchos at Aguilar, and basically nothing's changed. Everything continues as is. Korg are there, if you like. So Aguilar is now is underneath the Korg umbrella, which in some respects can only be a good thing, because it will help with distribution. It will help push the brand out there. Although, as a bass player, I see it everywhere I go. But from what can surmise, from what I've been told, it's business as usual. Nothing changes. Everything is still being built in the New York factory. Well, I say factory, it's an office, a big building. And I've been there and I've seen what they do, and it's quite scary how efficient and high quality the equipment is. And for anyone who doesn't know, I visited Aguilar and Spectre actually on a trip to New York back in 2014 with Bass Guitar magazine. And what basically, I mean, I knew how good Aguilar gear was anyway, but we went into their production facility and we're looking at all this stuff being made and the amplifiers, and they're all being sorted out. I should point out the cabinets are made in a separate location somewhere else in America, and actually as part of the Korg deal, the cabinets are now being made somewhere else, but the pickups, the preamps, the pedals, the amplifiers are still being made in New York. And so we're going around this facility watching how everything's being made, and it's all very impressive. And I saw this racking, like a load of racking on my left hand side, and on there was two amplifiers. The rack next to it had pedals that were being burnt in, but just two amplifiers on this huge shelf of racking. And I looked to Dave Avenius and I said, "What's the rack for, Dave? Because there's only two things on it." He said, "That's the returns." I said, "What, returns for America?" He went, "No, worldwide." They literally had two amplifiers in the whole world that were in their facility at that point to be repaired. That was it, two amplifiers. And I thought, well, if that doesn't say something about the quality of what you're producing, then nothing does. And from that point on, I was very interested, and I kept an eye on all the Aguilar stuff. But it wasn't until 2018 that I started using the amplification. I already had some pickups and pedals and preamps, but I hadn't started using the amplification. And then they came out with a Neo 212 cabinet, and that was it. I was sold hook, line and sinker. Because as you know, Gary, I love a 212, and it has to be lightweight. And at that point in 2014, they didn't have an SL 212. Well, by 2018 they did. So that was that. But going back to your question, all we can do is see. But I have been told that, you know, what Aguilar have stood for and what they've produced and how they work as a business, that will not change. But they come under the Korg umbrella. So, you know, same as Spectre, and that deal obviously has been running longer than the Aguilar thing. We can just see what happens. But as long as the quality doesn't go down and the craftsmanship and the fact that Aguilar stuff is made in America rather than in China. Not saying before we start a flaming war that stuff made in China is bad. It's not, but there is a general perception that stuff made in bulk in China perhaps isn't always as great as stuff made elsewhere. I hope that helped. I've tried to skirt around that issue as gently as I can. Okay, Stacey, a gig bag rundown. Yes, good to know what's important to carry and what can stay at home. Bags are important to keep healthy, and unnecessary fumbling for gear is maddening. So my next question to you then is, what would you prefer? Would you prefer that to be discussed open to everyone to discuss on a future chat? Or would you like that as a specific video? So you now need to reply to your own question. So I'm happy to do that either way. We can either do it as a group thing and say we'll do a live chat to discuss the contents of people's gig bags, or we can do it as a video and then replies will just be via the comments underneath. So I will make a note of that and you can let me know which one you would prefer. So gig bag contents. Cool. Okay. Amazing. Thank you so much. From some back into the questions here. Marla Audio. Amazing. Thank you so much. That's a pleasure. It's part of the service. All advice and guidance is most valuable, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. Anytime, if you've got, and I say this to everyone, if you've got questions or you watch any of the videos that are on the channel, either leave a comment below, contact me on social media. You've got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I respond to all of it. So if you've got a question and you need an answer and there's a fairly big gap between these live chats, you just contact me and I'll come back to you. But if you want to do it that you store up a load of questions to ask on the live chats, I'm cool with that as well. So, you know, I've just built up 26 years of experience doing this. So if I can help people in any way, I'm more than happy to do that. You know, if I don't want to, I'll tell you, but no, anything that I've learned is fair game, so it's fine. Stu Goodman, hi Stu, good to see you. During lockdown, I've got into online musical collaboration. Could you recommend a preamp to use to fatten up my tone? Indeed, I can. And Lord knows there's plenty of them out there. But well done for doing the collaboration stuff. You know, it's good to see people active. Okay. How could you recommend a preamp to use to fatten up my tone? Right. So you've got various options open to you, but before you even address the preamp thing, look at what bass you're using, look at your action, because obviously the lower your strings are, you're going to get more string noise. You can play a bit faster, but you'll get a lot of clatter. You can improve that by raising your action. So you get a stronger, more powerful tone by having your strings further off the fingerboard. But you it's a fine line between dropping the strings, having a happy medium, or going higher. The other option is to, if you use lighter gauges, so say anything between 3090, 4000, you're going to get some twanginess, a lot of top end display there. You can always then go up string gauge size, so you could go to 4505, you could go up 50, 110. Then there's all the custom sets like the Billy Sheehan set that's got a heavier, well, it's got a 110 E string to facilitate the drop tuning. So that's a possibility. If you're looking for a slightly warmer sound and you use steels, maybe you want to look at using some nickels, which will give you a softer, less harsh tone. The other option, if you use round wounds, is to contemplate using either ground wounds, which are also called half wounds, or going for flats, which obviously then take a lot of the string noise and fret buzz out of the equation. So that's all before we've even looked at preamps. When you get to preamps, you can then, I mean, there's so many options. You can either do it with DI boxes, and Lord knows there's plenty of those. Noble seem to be very popular. Reddit. Let me think, what else was there? There's the radial tone bones. They're great. Then you're looking at preamps that don't need to have a speaker connected. If you're doing this silently without speaker cabinets, some amplifiers will let you do that and take a DI out and power up without being connected to a speaker. Some don't. So check your manual and check online before you do that. Nothing worse than thinking, oh, I can just use the head. You haven't connected it to the speaker, turn it on and it goes bang. So yeah, check your paperwork before you do that. Now, in terms of what sound you're looking for, I mean, there's so many different possibilities here. So obviously, I don't know what amplification you already use. You might just want a preamp that's like a rack mount. And so you could be looking, if you're looking for quite a slappy tone, you might want to try and search out an SWR Marcus Miller. They stopped making those years ago, but they do come up from time to time. You might want to look at some alembic preamps. You could look at some old Trace Elliott ones that don't have or that require a power amp if you wanted to use it on a gig as well. If you're looking for a small gig baggable preamp, I mean, I can highly recommend, and this is what I've been using for certain gigs for the past few years. So this is an Aguilar AG700. This is one of the preamps you can use that doesn't need to be plugged into a speaker. So you can literally put that on my desk, plug in, and then take a DI out, and off we go and start recording. So, like, well, you can see how small and easy. So there are loads and loads of Class D amplifiers out there that are small, don't need to have a speaker load attached. But again, you've not given me any indication as to what musical style you're looking for or what sound you're looking for. But fattening up tone, I mean, again, look at your bass setup, look at the strings, look what style you're playing. You might want to move from using fingers or a pick to using your thumb. When I say thumb, I don't mean slapping, I mean that. So downstrokes and upstrokes on a string with your thumb will give you a muted tone. You can always use a string mute at the bridge, give you more of a Motown-y sound. So that's a possibility. There are all sorts of possibilities with your question. So I would suggest look at the instrument, look at the strings, look at playing technique first. Then once you're getting into preamps and DIs, I mean, the world is your oyster. Use YouTube. Look at some demo videos, look at some examples. That will give you a rough idea which items you're going to be looking for. And then it is really a case of getting out there and trying them. Obviously, a bit difficult at the moment. But once we get out of lockdown, you can get back into shops and try stuff. Do it, I would suggest. I hope that answers your question. Stacey's back. That's amazing. Yeah, the Aguilar amps will take. Yeah, Gary, thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you for attending. Nice to see you. We will catch up very shortly once we're out of lockdown, sir. No worries. And at some point, we need to converse regarding your collection for review videos on this channel, and pedals and amps. So as we can do that, let's crack on. Okay, show a gig bag rundown live. That is right. Very good. Okay, so Stacey has asked if I can do on a live chat, maybe we'll do it for chat number 4 then, a gig bag rundown, what I would put in a gig bag going out and doing gigs. I actually did a feature on this for Bass Guitar Magazine back in 2004, but technology has moved on so much that some of that stuff is redundant now. So doing a live chat on that would be good, and happy to hear what you guys suggest as well. Open to options there. So when I next get round to doing chat number 4, I'll advertise it as a gig bag rundown. That's what that chat will be. Okay, Stu, you've got a Sadowski MV4. Okay, right. Well, you're going to have quite a hi-fi tone already coming off that. So as I mentioned, oh, you've got a Gensler MG350. Okay, with the Sadowski, I would first of all look at string action. So if you want it to sound fatter and fuller, raise the strings. If you don't want to go down that road, look at what strings you've got on there, and look at your string gauges, look at the string material. So whether it's steel, nickel, it might be tape wounds. That might help what you're after. If it is a case of just having an amplifier to fiddle with, again, there is just so many options out there. So whatever your, I mean, I presume when you're saying what preamp to buy, you're not talking about an interface to plug into to record online. I guess you're already doing that. But it is a case of trying, and obviously what your budget is, because that will dictate a lot of things. But it's, I mean, I would sit and think, do I want a preamp that's in a pedal, in which case you could be looking at something like an Aguilar tone hammer pedal, which is very good, which is basically the inner workings of a tone hammer amp, but in a pedal. They're very good. Yes, I have one. You might be looking at, you could look at an EBS microbass. There's a microbass 2, now a microbass 3. Ampeg do one. I mean, literally every amplification company does a DI preamp pedal now, and they seem to be very not trendy, but because we're in lockdown and lots of people doing recording, they suddenly, every manufacturer's got these products on market. So I think you need to do some research as to what you ideally want, and then when time comes, get out there and start auditioning it for yourself. Let's have a look. Stu, yep. Gary has suggested check out the Tech 21 stuff. The VT bass DI is great. Most of the Tech 21 stuff is very good. I've got a Sons amp, one of the original ones here, the bass DI. The only problem I used to have with it is there was no mid control, and I found it sucked a lot of the life out of my bass tone. But that would be because the tones I needed, that pedal wasn't providing. It had a very classic Ampeg SVT tone. So lots of bottom, lots of top end, not a lot in the middle. Obviously, the latest bass driver Sons amps have got MIDI EQ. I reviewed one of their amplifiers and cabinets about 6 years ago. And although it was very good, it was the same sound that I'd heard in the original bass driver. So it was sapping a lot of the guts when I was out of my bass sound when I was playing. So again, check stuff out on YouTube. Here's some demos. Get an idea if that is something you're looking for. But the Tech 21 stuff, I mean, we've had a lot of it come through the mag and the Geddy Lee signature stuff and the Steve Harris. It's all great stuff. It's just, is that the sound you're looking for all the time? Or is it a sound that you're looking for some of the time to do certain jobs? So if you think you're going to get a lot of mileage out of it, then it's a no-brainer. If it's going to be something you're going to use very sporadically, is it worth the outlay for that? But, you know, each to their own. Pleasure, you know, no problem. That's what we're here for. Yeah, Gary, anytime. I'm just going to put this amplifier back in its bag, and then I'm going to have a quick drink. So fire away with questions, people. There we go. The amp hasn't been out much in the past 12 months. Hope you're all safe and well out there, by the way. Hopefully with all these vaccines, we are edging towards a finish line. Cheers, by the way. Happy New Year. So, let me see. There was something I was going to ask you, lovely people. It was, I've got some videos coming up, which are kind of one-offs. And I don't want to give the game away because otherwise it's just like when I announce it. But some ideas from you guys for video comparisons. I know the string comparison thing has been done to death, and you know, cheap models against expensive models, but is there any thing that my channel can offer you? Because the original premise when I set this up last year was the fact that we were all in lockdown and we couldn't get out to stores to demo stuff. Some stores opened as we sort of came into the summer, and lockdown kind of became less of a lockdown, if you know what I mean. But I was very conscious that people can't get out and try things, and my sort of example for that was, I have a couple of alembic bases here. There's one there and there's one up there, and unless you can try an alembic, and sometimes you will find them in shops but rarely, unless you can track one down to try one, you would always be buying blind, so to speak, without any reference point as to how one might sound. And I'm only using alembic as an example. I mean, obviously any boutique brand or anything that's sort of handmade is going to be different anyway. But my point for doing the channel was to create a reference point for people to go and watch the videos that I was producing in order to get at least an idea of something they might want to buy, or if they had £1,000 or £1,500 or £2,000 burning a hole in their pocket and they want to go and buy a new bass, they might not be able to go and try the things that they might be wanting to consider. Now, it's a lot easier to watch videos and demos and then to take something off your list to say, actually, that's not what I want. So if I was able to do that with some of the basses I've got and some of the equipment I've got, it would give players out there a reference point to say, okay, right, well, here's 10 basses that fit in my budget that Mike has reviewed. 5 of them I like, 5 of them I don't. So now I know those are the 5 brands and models that I would like to consider. So that's the premise of this channel, as well as all the other things like the essential bass albums, the interviews, the workshop features and the bass tips. So what I'm asking you guys out there in YouTube land is, what sort of videos would kind of work for you? What don't you see the magazines providing? And it might be something that, like Bass Player maybe had a column running 20 years ago and they stopped running it. I know Billy Sheehan used to do Billy's Science Workshop, and he would deal with readers' letters and go through various technical stuff. So if there's something that you're not seeing the other bass channels doing, and it's very easy for me to go on there and watch every other bass channel and their output, all of which are very good, by the way. If it's not addressing certain things that you feel would be useful, especially while we're in lockdown, if I've got gear that you might be interested in hearing, or I do the soundbite videos, which aren't reviews, they're just me playing with the equipment. So if you'd like to see more soundbite videos, let me know. And over the next, as I've said earlier, over the next couple of weeks, there will be more bass reviews going up. So, you know, the Alembics will be featured shortly, and there's some more status stuff and a whole load of different manufacturers' basses. So, yeah, okay, back to the questions. Oh, okay. Apparently, the questions have just gone down here. Here we go. Stacey's got an odd question. Okay. Is there magic to matching straps to basses based on the bass weight, or do you have a preference, or is it all personal preference anyway? My gut feeling is it's personal preference. I have used comfort straps since 1998, and I can't remember when they first appeared, probably a year before, maybe 97. And I've used them ever since because they relieve so much sort of the burden of wearing and carrying a bass. However, I have found some basses, alembic basses being a perfect example, where they are quite a bit significantly heavier, And what happens is, because that base is so heavy, it starts to really pull the comfort strap. Now, what you don't want is a strap like one of those old 70s elastic straps where you put a base on it and it suddenly ends up down by your ankles as soon as you put it on. But I have found the comfort straps slightly wanting when I've got an alembic on. They're fine, they work, but it just feels like they really want to go a little bit lower. But for every other base, the comfort strap's been perfect. I could get a leather strap for the alembics, but as I'm vegetarian, I prefer not to buy anything leather. And I know the comfort straps have 2 leather ends on either end. There's nothing I can do about it. There aren't any base straps I can find that don't have some piece of leather somewhere in their manufacture and design. So that's why I've kept with them. But I won't buy a leather strap out of or a wholly leather strap out of personal choice. Matching straps to bases. I mean, we've had the discussion one-to-one about base length, and I very much subscribe to Billy Sheehan's view on this, is that you really want a base strap that holds your base at the height that it would be when you're sat down practicing. Because when you're at home practicing, half the time you sat down, if not all the time. You might stand up, but you might be sat down. Now, if when you're practicing, your arms, hands, wrists, fingers, shoulders, back, body generally become familiar with the angles that the bass is at, especially when the neck is in position and you're playing. What you don't want is to then be going out playing, gigging, recording, stood up, and your bass either being higher or lower, more often lower, than it is when you're practicing at home. Some players, it's not a big it's not a big deal, but it can be, because if you are so used to it being at a certain height and angle, as soon as that bass is lower, I'm trying to do this so you can see what I'm talking. So if you're playing at a certain height and suddenly the bass is lower, all your angles have changed. And certainly for your wrist, suddenly that becomes like that. It's a lot more tight. You don't want carpal tunnel syndrome, and you don't want to be putting pressure on your forearms and your wrists. So I heavily subscribe to Mr. Sheehan's view on that. Get it at one height and then kind of stick to it. But, and I did that for years, I have found some basses just don't play nicely sat at a certain height. I don't know why. Dimensions, weight, body dimensions, sort of shape and size. So over the past sort of 4 or 5 years, I've sort of experimented with different straps, different heights, and kind of I know what works for each bass now. But nothing's ever written in stone. You can always, there are always things to change there. But you know, who's to say I'm right? I could be wrong. But I think just for sort of economy of playing, comfort, and playability, I would just keep the strap at the same height as it is when you're practicing at home. Okay, let's see who we've got here. There are comments there. Jorg, hello. Good to see you. Hope you're well. Jorg is a friend of mine from Germany. Also works with Shack basses, I think. The mono strap is vegan, right? Noted. Animal free. Is a bit flexible, but keeps even... here we go. But keeps even heavier basses from bouncing around, but still sits comfortable on the shoulder. I will check it out. I don't have any contacts at Mono, but I will try and track one down and see what I think. Thank you for the heads up. I hope you're well. Okay, Stacey, got it. Consistency and height is key. Yeah. Yes, well, we discussed this in your lessons, Stace. So, and obviously when you're practicing at home, you are sat down. So I would say get that thing at the height that you feel comfortable playing it at, and then kind of lock it in at that. I wouldn't start sort of moving it up and down, because it throws you such a curve on gigs. And ideally you want consistency. And also, as I've said, your arms, your fingers are kind of used to where they need to go and the angles. And once that all changes, as your arms go up and down, you're kind of fighting a losing battle, really. So I would generally say keep it consistent. So I hope that helps. So back to what I was saying before this round of questions. If there are things you guys would like that other channels aren't addressing, or if there are certain videos that I might be able to produce, or if they call on something I've done in the past, let me know. Leave comments, track me down on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Brooks's Bass Corner. I'm on all of them. And if I can help and produce videos that are useful to you, there's no point me producing videos that aren't of any use to anyone. So if there's something I can possibly help with, if it's comparing amps, and actually this is something Gary and I have talked about, is getting a bunch of basses together and then trying them through several different rigs, and amazing how different amplifiers can make your bass sound. It's the same thing as changing brand of string, changing string material, changing the gauge of string. Suddenly, and I had this 5 or 6 years ago when I was experimenting with different string brands. Different strings, different gauges, materials, different manufacturers can all completely change how your bass sounds. So as practical as it is to say, well, I just use this brand, I just like that material, that gauge, and stick to it, or put them on all your basses, you might be denying yourself some really great bass tones. So don't be afraid to try different strings on different basses. You might just find a real surprise. And even a manufacturer that you may have written off in years gone by, oh, I don't like their strings, try them, because things change over time. And you might just find a bass that you like, it's not really working for me at the moment, I don't really enjoy the tone this bass has. Changing the strings can make a hell of a difference. And there will be some string videos going up at some point. I'm going to try and tweak it a little so it's not the same old, this is a heavy gauge set of strings, this is a light gauge set of strings, rounds against flats. We'll try and mix it up a bit. Let me see. Thank you, York, agreeing on the constant height of the bass. These things, practicality of playing, the point sort of hits home as you gig more. And if you get into a cycle of constant gigging, as I did for 25 years, with about 3 weeks off in 25 years, that consistency and familiarity of the height of your instrument, how it's going to sit against you, how it's going to feel, makes gigging constantly a whole lot easier. The level of, or the aspect of the unknown, if your bass is lower, higher, something doesn't feel right, first time you try a different set of strings compared to what you would normally use, they can all throw you a bit of a curve and put you on edge on a gig. So where you would normally go on autopilot, all of a sudden you're sucked out of autopilot and you're aware of everything going on around you. And that can be really off-putting. You want consistency so that you can spend more time concentrating on your performance rather than worrying about and all the other things you've got going on, as opposed to, I need to play a D followed by a G followed by an A, and I don't know, and my bass is at the wrong height and the strings don't feel right and the amp's playing up and the monitors are feeding back. And so, yeah, create or simplify your bass playing in terms of practicalities as much as you can, because then you aren't having to deal with another thing to think of while you're playing. Well, that's my take on it. For years and years and years, I was kind of pretty set in my gear, how my bass was set up, the strings I used, and then I had a bit of a change. I started using some different basses on certain gigs that I wouldn't normally use. Started using different string gauges. Found as I've got older, I've started using a heavier string gauge on certain basses, whereas not, I used to be fairly standard on 4000s steels. Now I mix it up. Some basses do work better with a 4505, and they'll work better with flats. Now, 10 years ago, you wouldn't got me near a set of flat wounds for love nor money. And yet now there are certain projects I play in or certain things I work on, and a set of flats on a precision is totally the right tone for that project. Yet 10 years ago, I wouldn't have entertained that prospect. I'd have found another way of making it sound similar to flats. I would have used a string mute and played with my thumb rather than my fingers or a pick. It's horses for courses. And again, that's partly the reason for so many instruments and pedals and amplifiers, because they're tools of the job. And you don't want to be caught short. If someone says, I need this sound, or you're working in this sort of band and you got like 3 hours to do it and learn the set and get out to the gig, you want to be able to just grab the stuff as you need it. I feel like I'm wittering here. There's no questions coming up. So, send some stuff my way. And if I can answer it, I will. So we've got about 5 minutes left. So yeah, just to reiterate what we got coming up on the channel, we've got pedal reviews and interviews coming up this week. And I've got some more Essential Bass albums over the next 2 or 3 weeks, and a whole glut of bass reviews. So I can tell you now, there's an Alembic in there, there's a couple of Music Man basses, there's some Status basses, there's a Kubicki X Factor, there is a Lodestone bass fitted with Sims Super Quads and a John East preamp. We will also be featuring a Trace Elliott T-Bass, one of the original 15. There will also be an Aria SB1000, and there will be a Spectre Euro LX and a GB Rumour. There may even be 2 GB Rumours, a 4 and a 5 string. And they have been waiting for a while. They were filmed a while ago, but I've had so much other content to get up on the channel quickly that those videos kind of took a back seat. So those will be coming very shortly. So if you've been waiting on the Alembic reviews, they're very nearly ready for uploading. So I hope you enjoy those. And once I get this sort of slab of bass reviews out, I'll start doing some more soundbite videos. So for anyone there's only 2 soundbite videos on the channel at the moment. Basically, they're similar to reviews, but without my opinion and without the technical spiel. It's literally gear being used with drum tracks, so you can hear how those basses sound in different settings with different drum sounds. But it also allows me to kind of do some playing demos with pedals, with certain amps. I can mix and match different pedals to get different sounds. So there's going to be some of that coming up very shortly. I don't want to fill my channel full of sort of meaningless demos, but really they're there for people to, if they're interested in a certain bass or to hear certain sounds that the bass can produce, I want some demonstration there so that people have got something to refer to. Okay, yeah, there will always be variables at gigs beyond your control. Exactly. So I try to have as many constant things in place as possible. We're on the same page, sir. It's exactly the same thing. Consistent factors is what I want to say. You're right. Yeah, it's exactly what I'm saying. It's you want to make the job of performing and enjoying your gigs as easy as possible. So don't complicate things like different strap heights and yeah, we are talking the same thing here. Ron, yeah, you 2 guys know each other obviously from the London Bass Show, and that's cool. Stacey, Aria SB1000, yeah, it's in the rack. The video's filmed. I've just got to edit it up and upload it. So I should announce we've got Jazzy Ron here. I was on his show last week. Tonight he has the very wonderful and very tall Tom Stanley from Stonefield. Stonefield make excellent basses, based in New Zealand, slightly different to what you would normally expect of a bass, but the tones are quite fabulous, and they're a little bit left of center, but certainly worth checking out. So Tom's on Ron's radio program tonight on MixLR. You can get to it via the app, uh, online via your PC or Mac, or you can download the app on your phone. And Ron's show runs from 7 till 10 every Sunday. Well, it's every Sunday at the moment. And he plays some great music, and the interviews are there as well. And you can follow the show, and I will be from 7 o'clock. So looking forward to it. And Tom's got some great viewpoints on bass design. So if you aren't aware of Tom Stanley or Stonefield, I suggest have a listen to Ron's show tonight and check Tom out. And no doubt when we get back to doing bass shows and what have you, Tom will be here. He's a regular attendee at the London Bass Show, or London Guitar Show as it now is. That's all right, Ron. You can stick a tenner in an envelope, send it over. That's fine. And yeah, so I think we're coming up to sort of finish time. So thank you very much for your time and attention, guys and girls. Very much appreciated. If you've got any messages, comments, you can leave them underneath this video, or send them to the channel, or you can go via the social media platforms. So I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and I will reply to you as quickly as I can. We'll do another live chat in a couple of weeks, and at Stacey's request, we're going to talk about gig bags, what you need to be putting in your gig bag before you head out to your gigs. If you've got any ideas, save them up, put them on the chat next time. I'll start the chat off, and then we'll see what you guys come through with. And open to ideas. Some people say I take far too much in my gig bag. I just I like to try and cover every eventuality. I've never just been a chuck a lead in the gig bag and that's it. So I do have virtually everything and a kitchen sink in there. But that's what we'll make the focus of the next chat about. And yeah, so anything that you want to know, any questions, any suggestions, get in touch, and I will do my best to address it. So take care of yourselves, look after each other, and hopefully we'll be out of this pandemic, academic. We'll be out of this as soon as possible. But do take care of yourselves, and I will bid you farewell. Good night. Take it easy.